Hey everyone, my name is Drew and welcome to Novelytic. So today I'm going to be going over what I've read so far this year in 2021. In January I read a total of 10 books. Within those 10 books I read 3 fantasies, 1 graphic novel, 1 memoir, 2 nonfiction other than memoir, 2 poetry, as well as 1 that's magical realism. I'm really not sure what the genre is, but it falls within the fantasy magical realism area. In terms of page count, I read a total of 2,609 words, and if I may say so myself, I had a pretty good reading month. So I had a total of 4 5 stars, 1 4 star, 3 3 stars, and then 2 that were not rated. I don't feel comfortable rating nonfiction, so I just kind of leave that there. But yeah, overall, a pretty good reading month. So the first book that I read, I rated it 4 stars, and that was The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. So this is the final installment in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I was initially taking part of the Tolkien Along that was hosted by Beth at Books Next, Ashley at A Frolic Through Fiction, as well as Lauren at Fiction Tea. However, I procrastinated and didn't start this until January, even though this was the December read, but I digress. Overall, I rated this 4 stars. I thought it was a good end to the trilogy. It's definitely one of my favorite, or at least my top 10 favorite fantasy series. As the final installment, the overall tone and atmosphere was definitely significantly darker than the first 2, which was expected considering the trajectory that the plot was going. The parallel between books 5 and 6, so each book was separated into 2 different storylines, I thought it was crafted very well because they technically happen at the same time. So as someone who struggles with timelines, I appreciated that immensely. I definitely needed those hints within there to see like what was happening when, in consideration to the first part of the novel. My intrigue was piqued for the majority of the book. There was a period towards the end where that kind of dwindled. I don't know, it's just one of those, like, it was a traveling scene. It took so long. I was just like, can this be over? But and then it picked up again. It was good. And then the ending, even though I knew something like that was going to be happening, I didn't really think it was necessary. It didn't really fit. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe some people enjoyed that. Let me know if you did. But with that aside, I think that was really what I think that was the one thing that really brought it down in terms of star rating. But overall, it was a very good book, very good end to the series, and I look forward to going into more of the books that are in Tolkien's like Middle Earth universe. So the second book I completed, I gave it 5 stars. It was Book Love by Debbie Tung, which is a short graphic novel that is specifically geared towards book lovers. It's something I borrowed it from the library as an ebook, and I want my own copy, but I can't be buying more books. But I mean, the humor and truth in the graphic novel is on point. One day it will be added to my book collection. The next book I read was Brown Girl Dreaming, which is a memoir written in verse by Jacqueline Woodson. I can't believe how late I was to this game. It was so good. I actually picked it up as my prompt for Buzzwordathon. It's hosted by Books and Lala, and oh my gosh, this memoir is just expertly done. It's classified as a middle grade, but it can be read at any age and will still be impactful. The prose was just written beautifully, and the relationships that were created between the narrator with the other characters or other people in the book was just beautiful. Especially I loved the relationship with the grandfather. I think what's so great about this memoir is that even though it's told from the perspective of a child, we still see these glimpses of historical events. So for example, there's a hint of her mom going to trainings, specifically for the sit-ins that were happening, which I know was also touched upon in March Volume 1, which is John Lewis's story via graphic novel. And I just loved those little things in there. I thought it's a great platform to jump into those other historical contexts, as well as seeing it from the fact that, like, this is a kid experiencing this. It's a must read, beautifully written. This book received 5 stars. The next book I read via audio, and that was The Stormwall Reader, which was a compilation of narratives, interviews, stories from that was compiled by the New York Public Library, specifically about the Stonewall riots. I didn't rate this again because I am not comfortable rating nonfiction, but again, I think it's a must read. It's very illuminating of the different perspectives of different experiences of the Stonewall riots. The next book I read was my favorite book of the month, and that was Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It received 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. It was broken up into these 4 interconnected stories, yet they were unrelated in certain ways as well. It was just the book that I needed at that moment. It is a translated work, and I think it was initially a play, if I'm not mistaken, and I can see how it could read like a play, but oh, it was just so good. I think I definitely want to reread it at some point to further unpack my thoughts in terms of the connections and the symbolism and whatnot. I do want to explore it more deeply, and I will definitely be picking up the second book as well. I can't even pinpoint like the sense of comfort. Like I don't know exactly what it was, but this sort of like cyclical aspect that happens in each of these stories, whether it be reiterating the rules or what it is involved in time travel, was just done so well. I adored it. I'm not even 100% sure how I would explain this, so I'm just gonna read you the blurb on Goodreads because I feel like I'm not doing it justice. Alright, so what would you change if you could go back in time? In a small back alley in Tokyo, there is a cafe which has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years. But this coffee shop offers its customers a unique experience, the chance to travel back in time. In Before the Coffee Gets Cold, we meet 4 visitors, each of whom is hoping to make use of the cafe's time-traveling offer. In order to confront the man who's left them, receive a letter from their husband whose memory has been taken by early-onset Alzheimer's, to see their sister one last time, and to meet the daughter they never got the chance to know. But the journey into the past does not come without risks. Customers must sit in a particular seat, they cannot leave the cafe, and finally, they must return to the present before the coffee gets cold. I thought it was fantastic. Again, I want to go back and reread it if I have the opportunity to, as well as continue on with the series. The next book I read was nonfiction, and that is Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall, Notes from the Woman That a Movement Forgot. This is embarrassing, I started reading this back in maybe like August, September, and I got about halfway through. School started. I'm a teacher, and then I'm also in graduate school, so I kind of had to put it down. And then I finally finished it, and this is such an important read. I definitely want to revisit some of the essays that were in here, because they're definitely very valuable, and it talks about the exclusivity of feminism and sort of the way that white feminism has taken over and trampled on the feminism of others as well. But on the inside, the blurb says, today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot, and paradoxically, it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely discuss meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mikki Kendall, but food security, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. All too often, the focus is not on basic survival for many. Instead, it is on increasing privilege for the few. Prominent white feminists broadly suffer from their own myopia with regard to how things like race, class, sexual orientation, and ability intersect with gender. How can we stand in solidarity as a movement, Kendall asks, when there is the distinct likelihood that some women are oppressing others? Kendall makes many valid points in here, and I think it's a must read. Again, I didn't rate this because I don't feel comfortable rating nonfiction, but this is definitely, you should read it. The next book I read was a collection of poetry by Amy Nezuko Matato. It was her poetry collection, Oceanic. I rated this 5 stars. Fun fact, Amy Nezuko Matato was a professor at my undergraduate college way back in the day. So that's kind of cool to actually see her work like out in the wild. But like, you know, actually engaging in her work. I unfortunately didn't have her, but I have some friends who did, and they said they really enjoyed her classes. She actually just had her most recent book, I'll put the picture right here, won like best book at Barnes & Noble, so that's exciting. So I do want to dive into that one too, as well as her other works. Her poetry integrates the human experience with just nature, and I think that's seen across her work, considering that her most recent book really dives into that. So yeah, definitely a great collection of poetry. In addition to that, I also read Shine Your Icy Crown by Amanda Lovelace. So I received a NetGalley e-arc of Shine Your Icy Crown, so thank you. It was a very good collection. I gave it 3 stars. So it is a beautifully written feminist collection of poetry. It's the collection that I needed as a teenager. I think it will always serve as a reminder, even as an adult now, about my individuality and the power that I hold. The themes and metaphors and other, morals, they're very straightforward, but they're also very full of depth. The structure of the collection was super cool. Like, it felt like at the beginning of each section there was like an umbrella theme, and then everything underneath that umbrella sort of like fell out throughout that section, which again, super cool. Thought it was really well done. My favorite part, and this was a structural choice that I really liked, was there was one section that specifically would have a poem, and then would have a reaction to that poem from like Big Sister. And as a big sister, A, I really appreciated that. B, as someone who did not have a big sister, I feel like that is what I would wish my big sister would tell me. So yeah, I love that. It talks about growth, embracing yourself. Who doesn't need that? So yeah, definitely a good collection of poetry. Next, I read a collection of short stories or novellas, which are The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I am reading that as a part of the Tug-Along, the Throne of Glass read-along. I will link the Twitter down below. A couple of YouTubers are currently hosting that, where each month they're reading a book from the Throne of Glass series. I never read Throne of Glass. The only Maas book I've ever read was A Court of Thorns and Roses, at the recommendation of my sister. So I figured I'd give it a try. Why not? I gave the collection 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I'm curious if my thoughts on it will change after reading Throne of Glass, which I'll be reading in the month of February. Yes, these novellas are technically prequels, but I'm still curious if knowing what her story was first will have an impact on how I read those novellas. So it might be a rating I might change, I'm not sure yet. But overall, very good. I'm hoping that some of these characters I'll see in future books. This is totally embarrassing, but there is this one character named Sam, and for some reason I just kept picturing him as Sam from Lord of the Rings, like the Hobbit, but tall, and I don't know, that made for a very strange experience, so I don't suggest reading it right after Lord of the Rings. But yeah, but otherwise, yeah, good stuff. So the final book that I read was The Black Tides of Heaven by Nyan Yang. I gave this book 3 stars. It was a fantasy novella. It was actually the book club pick for the Fays and Gays book club, which again, I will link their Twitter down below. It was a really good novella. I wish there was more. Everything was so intriguing, and I'm wondering if, as I continue to read the series, will I learn more? Like, overall, like, I love the idea of this Slack magic. I do know, like, it does hint at the fact that it involves the elements, as well as, like, you know, the energy that flows through our bodies and the world around us. But I want to know more, and there was just these gaps in, like, you'd be like, oh, they're babies. There's two, by the way, I should probably preface this by saying the two main characters are twins, and they are, we see them as kids, we see them as teens, we see them as adults, like way into their adulthood, and sort of the different paths that they take. The other thing that I really appreciated was the fact that people are gender free, like they don't have an assigned gender, like it literally says in there, like, they're wearing like a gender-free tunic or something like that. I appreciated that, because they don't you don't have to decide till you're older, and actually you don't have to decide at all if you don't want to, which I thought that was a very cool take on this particular world. But it was very good. I cannot wait to dive into it more. I want to know what happens. I want to know more about these characters. I want to know more about the years skipped in between, and oh, it was just so good. I think really my biggest complaint was that I wanted more, which isn't a bad complaint. So, alright, so there you have it. That is my recent reads for January. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, please remember to subscribe and click like, and I will see you all soon. Bye!